We'd like to open the floor now to any questions you may have, which we will take in blocks of 3. If you could, microphones will be circulating. If you could identify where you're from and who you would like to pose a question to, we'd be most grateful. John.
John Aglenby from the Financial Times. A couple of questions for Shaka. To what extent do you think, did your observers, particularly the long-term observers, feel that Jubilee candidates were using and abusing state funds during the campaign? And secondly, to what do you ascribe the seemingly high number of spoiled ballots or rejected ballots? Is it a lack of voter education or something else? Thank you.
I have another question directly behind you.
Sophie Mkwena from the South African Broadcasting Corporation. I just want to get a sense in terms of the European Union, the statements by the opposition leader, you know, which almost tantamount to fueling violence and threatening. What's your reaction? Have you interacted with him? Have you spoken to him, particularly when he indicated that he's not going to accept the result? Is he willing to follow the laws of this country, perhaps using the relevant institution to raise his objections?
Thank you very much. And one more question before we pass it on.
Thank you for the questions. Indeed, our mission has looked at the possible abuse of state resources, and we have observed on the local level that this indeed happened, but it should be said by anyone who had the incumbency, so anyone who was in a position. It was not necessarily one side or the other better, unfortunately. But of course, on the national level, there is an advantage on one side that we continue to look into. When it comes to the spoiled ballots, this is indeed something that has stood out, and there could be a number of reasons for it. And I think it's important that those are followed up, whether it is voter education, whether it was confusion or difficulty to see the different tints of colors that could have led to depositing the ballots in different boxes than the ones they were intended for. So I think this is something that needs to be looked into, and our mission will continue to look at how that process is going as well, to the extent that we can. Then the question about violence or the threat thereof. I've been very clear, and I want to be clear again, that elections should never be an issue of life or death. They shouldn't be, and I really hope and believe that a lot of lessons have been learned in this country, and I've seen that the vast majority of Kenyans are deeply committed to peaceful, credible and transparent elections. And of course, we appeal to all to follow the avenues foreseen in Kenyan law. Should it be necessary to challenge anything, to address it at the IBC or to bring it before the courts through petitions. So we stand by that, and I think that is as important as ever today as it was before.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Is there a lady at the back?
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah from the SABC. How would you rate the process this far? We know the tallying process is still underway, but would you say this far the process has been free, fair and credible?
Thank you.
I'm Peter Fabricius, South African freelance journalist. Could you give us your sense of how the EU is going to deal with the claims by Raila Odinga that the process of transmitting votes and counting them was hacked? Some of the other missions have said that it's beyond their powers to investigate electronic hacking. Is that also the EU's position? Thank you.
Daniel Finnan, Radio France International. If Raila Odinga does call for peaceful protests, should the Kenyan authorities allow his supporters to take to the streets?
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the questions. With regard to the tallying process, our observers are continuing to observe. Just to remind everybody that we are aspiring to have a comprehensive observation of these elections. Our long-term observers have been here for 2 months looking at the campaign activities. Then there's, of course, Election Day, which is important, but the electoral process is still ongoing. and our observers are remaining here to observe the ongoing process. We are also looking at the different formats in which results are coming through and to see how that is playing out as it is ongoing. With regard to the serious allegations of hacking of these elections, I believe these should be seriously looked at. Of course, we are not, as independent and impartial observers, investigators, or in a position to look at the very details of the technological systems used and what attacks may have been waged against them, either successfully or unsuccessfully. So that is our role, but of course any serious allegation deserves to be seriously looked at. With regard to responses after the elections, again, we appeal to everyone to take their responsibility and show their leadership. I think that the top candidates in these elections have very important voices to their bases, and we urge them to use it, to take their responsibility and show leadership in an ongoing manner, to urge people to be calm, to show restraint, and to look at the outcome of these processes. And actually, if there is anything that needs to be challenged, or if people wish to challenge irregularities or outcomes of these elections, there are proceedings foreseen, there are laws foreseen, and we urge people to walk along that path and to seek redress according to the rule of law.
If we could have a microphone over on the far right, please.
Thank you. Tom Wolfe from Ipsos. Given the recent Court of Appeal ruling mandating or determining in response to the original petition that was taken to the High Court by NASA that only the results announced at the constituency level, backed up by Form 34Bs, based on the receipt and agreement, signing of the agents and so on of the 34As at the polling station, would be binding and not allowing the IBC chair at the BOMAs to make the determination. Some people that I've talked to, not a random sample, but have been surprised that the IBC and to the public through the media started quite soon to be announcing results from polling stations that had been sent in, I guess, by text messages, rather than wait and tell the public and the country to wait for these verified, judicially binding results coming from the constituency level. Was it your understanding that what in fact did happen was going to happen? And I'm just wondering whether in your discussions with IEBC, you felt that they had taken enough preparation to prepare the media and the public that in fact they would be doing this rather than waiting for the legally or constitutionally binding results coming together with the confirmed Form 34Bs. Thank you.
Pardon, yes, sorry,
Okay.
were there any other questions? Yep. Daniel?
So, as you mentioned, the courts have been clear about what results are final, and I think that the attempt to show transparently as soon as possible is one that that is in principle good for people to see how results come in, as long as it's clear that there's provisional results on the one hand and there's final results in the format foreseen under law. And I think the issue of communications, as the results keep coming in, and also as there are some delays as a result of technology that may not have functioned as well as it could have, or as it may have been hoped, is very important. So for the IEBC to provide clarity to all Kenyans in terms of what they're seeing, how the process is going, and to engage people that way, to show transparently what their role is and what is going on is of course very important. And I think it will continue to be important so that people know what they're looking at on screens and what are the legally binding results.
Thank you, Daniel.
RFI once again. What's your reaction to the sporadic violence that occurred in Kisumu and in Nairobi yesterday? There were at least a couple of deaths in clashes between Odinga supporters and police. Thank you.
Are there any other questions at all to go with that?
I think the only response to violence is to condemn it. Elections should never be a matter of life and death. It is each and everyone's responsibility to remain calm and to respect each other's freedom to cast votes and to also peacefully live onwards after elections. Of course, Kenya is more than elections. It is also the responsibility of the security forces and the police to provide for the necessary security without being overbearing.
Are there any final questions? One more question at the back there.
My name is Stanley from KTN. What is your call for IEBC and the Kenya generally, now that we know still votes are being counted? What is your call with this heated ideology that the system was hacked? And if IEBC looks forward to announce the president, what will be your call for purpose of peace so that all issues that are on board are taken care of?
Anybody else like to ask a question before we hand over to Maricha?
So I think Kenyans have displayed extraordinary patience on election day. I've spoken to people who had been up in the early hours, had been standing on their feet without food or drink for sometimes up to 10 hours. That's an extraordinary patience. I think it also expresses extraordinary hope for a better future and for being a part of shaping that. Now, it's not easy to be patient and wait for the results because everybody, of course, cannot wait to see them. But I do believe that this ongoing patience is important. And I think we need to give the IBC the time to follow through their task. They're working around the clock. They've been working around the clock. They have a lot of work to do. It is also important that they have the time to do these procedures well, that they feel the time to make sure that what they announce is clear. And we urge them to communicate clearly to Kenyans, to manage expectations, but to also play their part as they are mandated by the laws of this country. I've said it before and I will say it again. I'm a politician myself. I've run in elections where I've lost. Was it the highlight of my career? Not at all. But is it a normal part of taking the chance to run that you could potentially not win? Of course. And I believe, also with an eye on the future, it is important to be able to gracefully concede, to talk to your bases, and instead of creating any excitement, to really look to the future. So yes, we continue to urge everyone to be calm, to be resilient, and to be peaceful. I think that's what this country needs, and I'm also convinced that the vast majority of Kenyans are deeply committed to that peacefulness. There are scars from the past, but there have been significant efforts towards conflict prevention, peace building, and I think that those efforts hopefully are not in vain, and that people understand that each and every one has a key role to play, especially the leaders that have such large followings in this country.
Are there any final questions at all? If there are no final questions, I'd like, on behalf of the European Union Election Observation Mission Kenya 2017, to thank you all very much indeed for attending. We'd also like to thank the Honourable Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs, Amina Mohammed, for attending as well. Thank you very much, Madam. We will be distributing our preliminary statement and press release going with that outside in the registration area directly after this. The Chief Observer for Journalists has also said she is open to requests for very short one-on-one interviews with individual media houses. And if you could approach me for that afterwards, I will be outside also around the registration area. And so it just leaves us to thank you all very much indeed for attending. Thank you.